of synopsis, what we essentially have is a World War II-era book where Ukraine, so we have a kind of resistance movement, a freedom sort of movement in Ukraine, and a nationalist movement, essentially. And Amelia and Ivan and Victor. And what's happening here is, and I feel really, really, really sorry for them almost straight off the bat, because they're being attacked on three fronts. You've got the Nazis, you've got the Soviets, and then you've got other splinter groups of their same movement in Ukraine. So you just feel like they almost don't stand a chance from the start. And they, it is a resistance. They're working against all odds.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow, okay.
Was that, obviously, yes, we do have the Nazis, we do have the Soviets. Was it a conscious effort to put, the other side of the resistance group in and kind of increase that difficulty for them?
Yeah, because it was true. And I grew up in this very splintered society in the Ukrainian diaspora. So it played a huge part in just the relationships within the Ukrainian communities. There were things that came out that just made things ugly. And I think I wrote in my author's note that this was a very cathartic process for me to write this book. And I really wanted to kind of figure out, where was all of this coming from? And in the end, what I'm seeing is everybody has the right idea. And everybody wants the same thing, but their approaches are completely different and come into conflict with each other. And so basically everybody wanted to rule Ukraine.
Yeah.
But the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, there was a splinter of those who were living as emigres in the West and those who were living in Ukraine under Soviet rule and oppression, and they wanted to have say in what was going to happen with the country. So a lot of different things going on.
Yeah, very splintered country. And then before and afterwards, right, as well, was Poland also owning part of Ukraine, and Russia, and still problems. So wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to bring this through the story. Like it was like taking a pot of borscht and trying to pull all the ingredients out to figure out how this all happened in the first place.
Tell me this, writing a book that, obviously it's a novel, we've got our fictional elements, but we've also got a lot of real elements as well. Does having real material to work from do you think it makes it easier or harder to write the fictional parts?
It's tremendously difficult writing about people that
My God.
Like compounding people from my family and then creating these fictional characters. But once I was able to really create, really their own definitions or their own personalities, it was a lot easier. From the plotting aspect, it's really awesome to have all of these anecdotes because you kind of want to build the things in. There was a lot of things that my editor had me cut out because she was afraid I was going to lose the tempo and the pacing,
Right, yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that I had put together regarding my family's kind of story from east to west did go in. And I used the most powerful stuff and the stuff that was really related to those characters.
And Chrystyna, I just want to know, were you born in Ukraine or are you Ukrainian from? Yeah,
I was born in the USA, like Bruce Springsteen, but first generation. So my grandparents and my parents came from Ukraine after World War II. My mother was born in Salzburg, but now I live in Austria. So I kind of made a big circle.
I read that, yeah. And so do you find that you're now in Europe again, Austria? And did you find you want to discover your roots? Is that why you're doing this book? Is that why you're writing? Is that why you're in Europe?
The whole reason that I even ended up here was because I was on a trip to follow my family's footsteps.
Okay.
And I ended up meeting a backpacker that I had met in Alaska.
Oh my God.
And we traveled to Italy together from Austria. And then when I returned, I said, I don't even want to go back to the States anymore. So I tossed my ticket, and
Wow.
That's great.
and I thought, I'm going to figure this out. So,
Wow.
and I did. I did.
That is awesome. Yeah. Wow. No, I'd love to read this book. And you've done well for yourself. You said you're just about to release a new book
Yes.
this week.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
That is this.
So this is the book that
created.
comes out, because this is not your
So-
first book, right? You had a previous
Yeah.
book, but this is the new one that comes out on Thursday the 2nd.
Oh, right.
This is
Okay.
my-
Sorry, I didn't
yeah.
get that. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
this is
Okay.
my 10th novel. I can't-
Wow, and I
It's
didn't
a
know it
big
was that
time.
many.
It's
Wow,
10.
that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
that's an accomplishment.
That's such an accomplishment. Well done. Wow.
Well done,
My God.
indeed.
And your other books sound very interesting too. Are they all historical as far as I can see?
Yes.
Really liked it.
So
Well, okay.
yeah, I like to write stories about
Mhm.
I like to travel, and while I'm traveling, I'll discover things about history that
Wow.
I'm like, wow, why doesn't anybody else
I
know this? You
Love that.
know?
Love that.
And so I think my writing career was kind of set when I started doing the
Yeah.
Russian Valley series, and that's it takes place in northern Italy.
Yeah.
And I don't know
No
if you
Man's
guys have
Land
ever,
is the first book, right?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to just over the Austrian
Mhm.
border into Italy. There's a huge lake. It's 4 miles long,
Mhm.
and off the side of the lake there is a church tower coming straight out of the water.
Wow.
And
Oh, wow.
I'm a journalist, so my first question was, how does that even happen? You know,
Wow. My God.
why
Yeah.
is it in there? You know, and so I started doing the research, and unfortunately, essentially everything I was finding was in German or Italian, and so it took me quite a number of years before I tackled the project and said, okay, and this is before DeepL and Google Translate. Google Translate used to translate strawberries in German is Erdbeeren, and if you plug that into Google Translate, it came
Yeah.
out earthberries. Yeah, so
Earthberries, yeah.
that's how long ago I started researching.
Wow. Okay.
story.
Yeah.
PJ does actually speak German, so he'll get
Oh,
that.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
to. Yeah. I was just want to say, yeah, Erdbeer literally means like earthquake. So I can imagine the
Cool.
conflict went through.
Yeah. Oh, that would definitely be interesting for you, because it was again, like very few people, they'll go over the border and they're like, why are there a bunch of Tyroleans living down here, you know,
Wow.
down here in northern Italy? And somebody once told me, they're like, well, yeah, you know, Mussolini, Hitler, they really didn't get along, and something happened. But it's not.
Yeah.
It started after World War I is when the
Mm.
conflict began. Yeah.
Wow. And you researched that and turned it into books. I love that. Yeah, that would be my approach, because I wrote a novel as well called Okutama Express. It was also set around the Second World War. So the Second World War for me is the one where like all like they're all crazy, but it's so well documented. You see, the Second World War, that I find like
Right.
it's so well documented, but at the same time, there's so much that people don't know about, and
Right.
to like just reach out into that cauldron of stories and take out a bowl of soup of stories. It's just so it's easy, but it's not done enough even. So I find it great that you did that.
So,
Wow.
do you have German heritage then?
Yeah, so my mom
Okay.
is German and her family, and I grew up speaking German with her, and English with my dad because he's Irish. So yeah, very lucky, because I find the language barrier might be often a bit problematic, right, when you're doing the research. So it helps when you just know the language and like read the documents, but also talking to the people, because I imagine you probably did you talk to a lot of people actually as
I
well? The
did.
people who live there?
Yeah, I
Wow.
only live 4 hours away from South Tyrol, so I was
Okay.
down there about 3 or 4 times a year each year. And like I said, it took me a long time to start researching, because I really did need to learn the language. And once I started getting to the root of things, I realized how very raw the pain was on the surface still. And you know, there's a massive identity issue. You know, if you ask the South Tyroleans, are you Italian or are you German? They'll say, oh, I'm not German, you know, because it's actually, we were Austrian. And even then we had autonomy. And so they consider themselves Tyrolean, number one. And there is still a movement down there that is trying to bring South Tyrol back to Austria.
I hear that, yeah.
I didn't know that, right?
Yeah, I heard that there's a political party that's trying to like just doesn't want to be in Italy, right? They just wants to belong to Austria.
They want to belong to Austria, as if the grass is greener over here. But I hate to tell everybody this, it's not. It's So you feel all of this, and it's those emotions and such in this that I try to bring across into the story. So I definitely don't, and I didn't in The Woman at the Gates either. I don't try to create good guys and bad guys. There is no such thing, and especially in a war. It's about finding either your best self or your worst self in the process. And I really love exploring these moral dilemmas in my stories. What is it going to make out of you? Is it going to make the best out of you, or is it going to make the worst out of you?
Totally. I love that.
It's interesting though that you say, that you don't see good guys and bad guys necessarily in the book, because I think that you're right. There are certainly with our main characters, we do have, they're trying to do their best essentially, and it's a difficult situation. But there's definitely one or two people that I saw as a bad guy, or I didn't like, But again, they were just doing their job, and I get that, and they were doing what they were supposed to do. But for example, so let's delve vaguely into the plot. We don't like to give too many spoilers, but we need to set up a little bit. So there is a part where effectively they're in a concentration camp, and she manages to get, I suppose, what is a relatively cushy number, because she's got an office job in there compared to some of the people who are doing more physical work. But the guy who she's working for, he treats her really, really horribly, and for me, he was the prime villain. I didn't like him at all, and I don't think you could tell me anything to make me like him. At the start, I thought, okay, he's giving her a nice little position here. Maybe he's a decent guy, and then, oh no, you've got to wear certain clothes when you're in with me, and then some of it I'm thinking, okay, but it's just the bit where she effectively asks him for help, and then he beats her up essentially, and I just, okay, I can't anymore. This. I don't like this guy. He's a villain, and it's going to be very difficult to persuade me otherwise.
I had no idea who he was going to be until that scene where he sets the clothes out for her. Like, she arrives to the office to work for him, and she has to get out of her camp clothes and change behind the door of the office. And he's got a dress hanging for her there, and fresh pumps. And we don't even know to whom those pumps belonged, right?
Wow,
and he makes her do her hair up in a special way, and he doesn't call her by her Ukrainian name, but calls her by a Germanized version of it. And this is where we get this sadistic psycho picture of this guy, oh my God.
Wow.
And I remember I wrote that scene after my first cup of coffee, and I'm like, whoa, Chrystyna, all right, let it rip. Jeez.
Yeah. So you often don't know how the characters evolve, right, during the writing process. You kind of
but oh wow, yeah. I'm a Scorpio, so I have a very dark side.
Okay.
But she really gets unlucky, There's again, without giving too much plot away, but there's a part where they're in a prison. There's another part where they're in the camp, so they're not having an easy time of it. They're going through this kind of hellscape, and they are getting caught in most of the traps. It's not as if our heroes are kind of wandering through without much peril. They're right there in the thick of it, and it's difficult. But for me, what really got me just is the love story. Obviously you've got Amelia. She's almost engaged, I guess, to Victor, and then we think, well, something might happen to Victor. And then there's Ivan, who's kind of always been there, most of her life or whatever. And then there's the connection with him as well. I'm a super romantic. All I want to read from a book, all I want to see from a film, all I want to hear from a song is, but did they all fall in love and everyone got married? That's all I want. I was very, very pleased with that.
Good. So I did deliver it.
You did. And there's an amazing moment where I'm just going to to see if I can find the quote here, because it's one of my favorite bits. Ivan got onto his knees, then onto his feet, and she watched him shed his layers. The two of them stepped toward one another like the first two people ever to enter the world. And then that's where the chapter ends, on just this lovely poetic, I'm picturing a painting, in my head. And then of course the attack comes immediately afterwards. So.
That your dad is being held by your grandfather and in a concentration camp outside Berlin. And I just want to know, how old was your dad?
My father was, I'm gonna have to guess, so it was 1945. He was about 10. Not
10
quite
years
10 years old. He was 9 years old, like 2 months from being 10.
Wow, that's very.
9
Thanks for
years
sharing
old.
this. This is mad.
And he remembers my grandfather saying, these are your future soldiers for the Reich, and you're killing them. And the camp commander said, all right, take him to the hospital. And the doctor then wrote out a pass. And this was the part of research that I couldn't find answers to, because it was all kind of told to me by my father. But I really wanted to know, what did these passes look like? Was it really feasible, or was he, kind of too out of it? I didn't understand how this would even be possible. And indeed, my mom found this pass with my grandmother's photo on it. It says, this mother is allowed to leave the camp to take her son to a specialist in town.
Oh my God.
And that is when they started to put together the plot of escaping the camp.
Wow.
Oh,
I mean, this is some of the most powerful parts of the novel. I just assumed that bit was pure fiction. I can't believe that bit was real. That's astounding.
Wow.
So I'm looking for the photo for you guys.
Yeah,
I thought I could at least show you,
It's amazing. You found this, that you're found, and you and your husband.
My mom is
your mom, yes.
Yeah, my mom is like, I saw these photos over 30 years ago when I was first interviewing my family.
Okay.
So I asked her, I'm like, could you please look for this shoebox? Because I know there's tons and tons of photos there. And I got it. So now I need to just share my screen. Am I allowed to do this?
I think so. No, if not, I can give you permission.
I can email it to you.
Yeah, please do, because I'd love to see it, actually. I'm very interested in that too, especially from my German family. What they went up to. Now, to be honest, I have got to admit that my grandfather, he was forced into the Nazi army because he was 18. He wasn't 18. He was just 1 month off being 18 when the Second World War started. And to be honest, though, like, I'm not trying to defend him really, or maybe I am actually, but he, if you didn't join the Nazi army as a German, you will be put into a concentration camp, obviously. As you might have heard, yeah. And so, like, he also shot himself in the legs because he just didn't want to fight anymore. He didn't want to kill anymore, And he said he never killed. I'm not 100% sure if that's true, because he said that in his army, at least in his division, everyone kind of shot on purposely badly and not towards the people, because he said in his division, and probably most people, I think it's true, like, no one really wanted to be in this killing game.
Right.
Yeah. So he was shooting just to the side. And then eventually, to be honest, though, like around 1944, when it was really escalating, they're going to go to Russia, it was just too much. So he just did what a few other people did, shot himself in the legs. So he'd be arrested by the English because he knew he'd be treated better than Russians.
Yeah, we've got the pass on there now.
Oh my God, you got the pass on here now. Das Kind, I think
das Kind muss, bla bla bla, Arbeitsstelle der Mutter sofort ins ärztliche, bla bla bla.
God.
Laute Behandlung.
So, like, the kid has to, I'm not saying all of it, but the kid has to go to like doctors, what's the word for that?
Right. So he was
caring, to doctors caring.
So this was their Polish name. They kept claiming that they were Polish because Lucyk is a Polish last name. So they kept claiming that they were Polish because, and especially after World War II, because they knew that if they were sent back to Ukraine, they would all just they'd be sent to camps, you know.
Yeah.
Stalin had a very strict policy. If you were found outside of Soviet territory, you were a traitor, period. End of story, no questions asked.
God.
The last part of the book really deals with this mass chaos of, you know, of these former Soviet residents really, really begging the British and the Americans not to send them back. Yeah.
That comes across in the novel. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was issued January 12th, 1945. And you see my father's birthday is the 3rd, or 1935 is March 3rd.
My
Mhm.
God, okay, that's crazy. And who is the person in the photograph?
That's my grandmother.
That's your grandmother. Okay, so that's his mother.
That's
Thanks for
his mom.
sharing. So just describing it to you guys on the radio, it's even readable. Usually I can't read this old document, but it's clear enough to read. And you got a picture of your grandmother there looking, wow, she's looking very powerful. There's something a bit almost like, I'm getting the impression that she had, well, I'm just getting I got the impression almost like, and I mean in a good way. Well, I mean it in a complex way, and kind of like she had to be a sort of a not feminine figure. Like she has to be strong and like she has to like suppress her femininity and like this is me solid. But I got the impression that she was putting a defensive sort of face. And there's a lot more going on behind it there. It's
yeah. You know, the whole reason that I had to come up with this character Fitzwald in this office is my father. All he could do is tell me that my great aunt would return from work in the slave labor camp. And he said she was wasting away very quickly and she refused to talk about what she was doing. So I, as the author, I had to figure out what was happening in the background, you know, what was so terrible that she wouldn't be able to talk about it.
Well, you're doing a great job. You're a chronicler, basically. You're the family history. You're bringing it out and inspiring.
I think that's a really worthwhile endeavor. You know, I really do. Definitely. And there's some really, really, really powerful stuff in here. You know,
thank you.
Even just here's to take a one-line quote. Stalin gave orders to burn everything, so there was nothing left for the Germans to take ever again. You know, it just shows you the position they were really in. Because I'm sure if they'd been the other way around, the Nazis would have done the same thing. They would have burnt everything so the Soviets couldn't. You know, they didn't have a chance. They're fighting as the underdogs, and you really, really root for them. You know, and it's very powerful. And the treatment of people. I mean, there's a bit where when she's in the prison, her throat's raw from screaming, tears down her face as they torture her, cold water, electricity. You know, ripping out her nails. It's horrendous stuff, and you really feel, but it really great. I mean, I read the book in 2 or 3 days because I wanted to, you know, to keep going. I needed a happy ending. I needed something, you know. I needed to know that they survived, or you know, someone's fallen in love, please, you know.
Yeah.
And I find also that when I visited Lviv, where part of the novel was set in Western Ukraine, I mean, you know, that used to be a place called Galicia. For you guys listening, not Spanish Galicia, but Galicia. And it used to be, and Poland invaded, and Austria, and then the Austrians tried to force the German language into them, but they were speaking Polish, but they're really Ukrainian, and then the Russians came, and it's all such. When I was there, and also when I lived in Krakow in South Poland, all these places really around that area, it's very omnipresent. I find it's like World War II. Just every day you're just kind of reliving it. I find, and it can be quite.
I lived in Radom, not too far from Krakow.
Yeah.
I was teaching there, and there was something. You woke up every day with a swastika in your face.
It's a bit like that, right? I mean, it's kind of like it's very traumatic, and I get it, but it's kind of okay. Can we maybe one day not directly or indirectly talk about World War II, and they're still dealing with that, yeah. It's terrible. So I think it's great that other people can read it, because it's not, you know, when I'm now in Spain. Now I don't think about it too much, but it's still important to remember. So it's great.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to end with 2 things.
So on a happy note.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say it was because you mentioned that in Western Ukraine, They were pushing the German language, they were pushing the Polish language and everything. So my grandmother, when we were living all together in the United States, she would cook things and it always had kind of this Germanic name. And my favorite was schnitzel.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
my grandmother's schnitzel. Now, wait a second, because I go to Vienna and I'm like, oh my God, they have schnitzel. I'm ordering schnitzel. And you know what I got? I got a pan-fried steak. It was this flattened piece of meat that was breaded and coated. You know what a schnitzel
That's what I
is.
know as schnitzel. Yeah.
I grew up with schnitzel being little round, like almost meatballs, like fast, almost like ceviche.
In Vienna, the schnitzel is at PJ. It's essentially what they call milanesas in Spain. It's just like meat, just pan fried in breadcrumb.
Right.
Yeah, very thin.
Right. And I thought, what is this? And my grandmother used to make it with, ground beef, and that was her schnitzel. So there were a lot of things that were lost in translation.
It's crazy, right? But actually, I know from Poland as well. I had a girlfriend who was from the border, Bratislava, at the southern border of Poland, and they're called the Gorski people. Gorski, they're not really 100% traditional Polish. The mountain people, exactly, yes. And they also do it that way. They do the schnitzel a lot smaller. And she didn't exactly do like round. Yeah, exactly, but nothing way as near as big as head. No, just small portions, several. So it's just culture just blends and changes, and that's why I love these kinds of novels where you explain the story.
Chrystyna, thank you so much for calling in. If I may, I want to close with two things. The first, I just want to read the poem. I want to read the famous poem from the book. With her, I am the man I am meant to be. That I love. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole novel, because it's very simple, straight to the point, and it really got me. But the other thing I wanted to do was something that we do ask to everyone before we let you go. I'm conscious of time. If there was any book that you could have written, any actual existent book that someone else wrote that you wish you had written, what would it be?
I can't answer that question. I know, I know you guys ended on this, but I can't answer that question. I mean, sure, I would love to have been, like the guy who wrote All the Light You Cannot, or what is it called? All the Light You Cannot See. Yeah.
All the Light You Cannot See.
Yeah, Anthony Doerr. Because it's just so popular, and it really kind of paved the way for World War II books. So this is my homage to him. But I have been doing writing courses, and I've been writing essentially almost all my life from second grade. And the one thing that I have learned is this: you can give each of us the same subject, the same topic, and the same plot of a book, and each of us are going to write a completely different book. And in the author community, I really want to stress this: there is no competition. Like we don't write the same stories. We don't try to write like other people. We might try to write to market. Some people can do that. But I just want to write the stories that I want to write.
That's an interesting take. A lot of people just pick their favorite book growing up, and they say, oh, I wish I'd written that one. But we did have one author who said, I don't know why people don't just all say Harry Potter and then they'd all be built millionaires. That's it's the most obvious answer, But look, thank you so much for calling in and for sharing your wonderful stories with us. It's been wonderful, and have yourself a really nice evening.
Thanks so much.
Good luck.
Don't forget, everyone, that the book does come out. Depending on when you're listening, it's going to come out on the 2nd of September. Let's see it again. There we go. Lovely. The Woman at the Gates.
Wow.
And I'll put a link in the show notes anyway, in case people want to find it on Amazon.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.